As a Christian, it's essential to examine the values and principles of political parties to determine which ones align with biblical teachings. In the case of liberal Democrats, there are several reasons why Christians may struggle to trust them. One primary concern is their stance on abortion. The Democratic Party has consistently supported access to abortion, often using rhetoric about women's rights and reproductive freedom. However, this stance directly contradicts the biblical value of the sanctity of life. The Bible teaches that human life is precious and created in the image of God, and that we are called to protect and defend the vulnerable, including the unborn. In contrast, liberal Democrats have advocated for policies like late-term abortion and taxpayer-funded abortion services, which are morally reprehensible to many Christians. The party's refusal to support legislation that protects the rights of the unborn, such as the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, further erodes trust between Christians and liberal Democrats. Another area of concern is the Democratic Party's stance on traditional marriage and family values. Biblical teachings emphasize the importance of marriage between one man and one woman and the value of traditional family structures. However, liberal Democrats have consistently pushed for the redefinition of marriage, advocating for same-sex marriage and other non-traditional family arrangements. The shift away from biblical values has led many Christians to question the party's commitment to upholding moral principles. Furthermore, liberal Democrats often prioritize the separation of church and state, which can be problematic for Christians who believe that faith should inform their political engagement. While the First Amendment guarantees freedom of religion, many Christians feel that the Democratic Party's interpretation of this amendment often results in the suppression of Christian voices and values in the public square. This can be seen in the party's support for policies like the Equality Act, which would force Christian businesses and organizations to compromise their faith-based values. In addition, the Democratic Party's stance on Israel is a significant concern for many Christians. The Bible teaches that God has a special covenant with the Jewish people, and that Christians should support and bless Israel. However, liberal Democrats have often been critical of Israel's actions, and some have even advocated for policies that undermine the country's sovereignty. This can be seen in the party's support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions BDS movement, which seeks to economically pressure Israel into making concessions to the Palestinians. The Democratic Party's economic policies are also at odds with biblical teachings on stewardship and personal responsibility. While the Bible encourages Christians to care for the poor and vulnerable, it also emphasizes the importance of individual responsibility and hard work. Liberal Democrats often advocate for policies like socialism and wealth redistribution, which can be seen as contradictory to these biblical values. The party's support for increased taxation and government intervention in the economy can also be problematic, as it can lead to a lack of personal freedom and a diminished sense of responsibility. Finally, the Democratic Party's approach to social justice is often at odds with biblical teachings on morality and justice. While Christians are called to care for the marginalized and oppressed, the party's emphasis on identity politics and intersectionality can lead to a focus on group rights rather than individual dignity. This can result in policies that prioritize the interests of certain groups over others, rather than promoting a more nuanced and biblical understanding of justice and morality. In conclusion, as a Christian, it's challenging to trust liberal Democrats due to their stance on issues like abortion, traditional marriage, and Israel, as well as their economic and social justice policies. While individual Democrats may hold different views, the party's platform and actions often contradict biblical teachings and values. As Christians, we are called to engage in the public square and advocate for policies that align with our faith, even if it means challenging the dominant ideologies of political parties. By doing so, we can work towards creating a more just and compassionate society that reflects the values of our faith.